A beautiful young woman vanishes during an ancient tomb excavation, only to wake up in a brutal past, centuries before Christ. Trapped in a forgotten civilization torn by war and power, she's hunted by a ghostly figure with a skull for a face and glowing green eyes. Each step she takes, he's closer. Each breath, she feels watched. But in the darkness, a guardian emerges, a fierce protector, a silent warrior. Spiritual forces clash in the jungle. The possessed hunt the living. She runs, she hides. Will she survive this cursed time, or was she never meant to escape? This is not a dream. This is a past that remembers you. It was supposed to be just another dig. Dry winds, sand in my shoes, and hours scraping at stones older than language. I was part of a team exploring an ancient site near the Rio Grande, where rumor said a buried kingdom once stood. The others stayed near camp. I wandered farther than I should have. There was something about the slope, the way the rocks curved. I followed it and found a strange arch, buried halfway in red clay. Curious, I crouched down and touched the carvings. They pulsed warm like breath. The next moment, the air split like lightning. I stumbled back, but the world had already shifted. No dig site, no tent, no radio. I stood in dense jungle, thick trees choking the sky. The air smelled of damp earth and wood smoke. Birds I couldn't name screeched overhead. Drums echoed in the distance, slow and heavy. Somehow I had fallen into another time. My name is Tessa, by the way. I was 24. Half-trained archaeologist, full-time caffeine addict. None of that mattered now. A group of warriors spotted me not long after. They spoke a dialect I'd never heard, but somehow I understood. They thought I was a spirit, a skywalker. I didn't argue. A woman named Ayani offered me shelter. She wore layered cloth and beads, eyes like polished stone. Her brother, Kale, didn't trust me. Always watching, hands near his belt, where he kept a carved wooden whistle. At night, I heard them whisper. A darkness was coming, they said. The devourer had returned. I didn't know what that meant until I saw him. He came from the trees, tall and twisted. A man, but wrong. His skin looked burned, stretched too tight. His face was a hollow skull with no eyes, only dark pits. Two sharp fangs curled from his lips, and when he turned toward me, I felt the breath leave my chest. They called him Varric, a curse from the old world. He moved without sound, without warning. He would appear near the edge of the village, then vanish. Children stopped playing, even the dogs refused to bark. One night he came closer. I had wandered near the river, needing space. I wasn't supposed to leave, but I saw him. Varric. He stood beneath the trees, those glowing green sockets locked on me. I didn't run. My legs wouldn't move. He stepped forward, then came Oren. I don't know where he came from. His face was painted with ash, body wrapped in wolf hide. He threw a powder into the wind. Varric hissed, retreated like smoke. Oren turned to me and said only one thing: stay close if you want to live. Since that night, he never left my side. He spoke little, but his eyes carried storms. Ayani said he was once a priest, chosen to guard the balance between the living and what waits beyond. I didn't understand it then. I do now. Because this world isn't just older, it's haunted by memory, and Varric isn't the only one hunting.
I hadn't slept in 2 days, not deeply. I'd close my eyes and still hear the drums, the crackle of fire outside my tent, Kale whispering with Ayani in a language I didn't know but could somehow feel. It was as if the jungle itself had a voice. Oren stayed close, always near the tree line. He didn't speak much, but I could sense he was watching over me. There was a weight in his gaze, something old and heavy, like he had seen too much. He moved like part of the forest, silent, precise. One afternoon, the sky turned strange. No clouds, but the wind shifted, cold and dry. Ayani looked toward the mountains and murmured something under her breath. I caught one word: Zareth. I asked her later who Zareth was. She didn't answer directly, only said he was once human, long ago, before he broke the old pact and disappeared into the cursed grove. Some believed he'd died. Others believed the trees had taken him. That night, I woke to chanting, low and slow like a heartbeat. The village was gathered near the sacred pool. Flames reflected off the water, and smoke drifted high into the sky. A woman named Taylor stood at the center. She was older, face lined like cracked clay, but her voice cut clean through the night. She told of a veil weakening, of something crossing. Her hands shook. When she locked eyes with me, I felt exposed. Before dawn, Kale warned me not to wander past the marked trees. The soil there was soft, he said. Things beneath it stirred. I didn't ask what. I didn't want to know. But curiosity is louder than caution. Around noon, when most were gathering roots near the eastern fields, I slipped into the edge of that forbidden path, just for a moment. The jungle darkened almost instantly. Leaves hung low, damp and still. The air felt thicker. I heard a sound not animals, not wind. A slow scrape, like fingers on bark. I turned back, too late. Zareth stood ahead of me, not close, just far enough that I questioned if he was real. His skin looked dry and stretched, but not like before. He had changed. 2 red marks glowed where his eyes should have been. His jaw hung too wide, like it had forgotten how to close. And even though he said nothing, I felt a pull inside my chest. I stepped back and nearly tripped. He tilted his head, not in curiosity, but calculation. The way a predator considers distance. He raised one hand. The trees behind me groaned. I ran. I didn't look back. Branches snapped. Something thudded against the ground behind me. I don't think he chased. Not yet. Oren was there when I collapsed at the edge of the village. His face changed. He didn't scold me. He just helped me stand and said we had less time than we thought. That evening, the firelight seemed dimmer. Even the children were quiet. Ayani offered me a cup of something bitter, said it would help me sleep without dreams. I didn't drink it. Instead, I sat with Oren. He told me the grove was once a sanctuary, until men began using it for power. That's where Zareth made his choice. He wanted to live beyond death, to never be forgotten. But nothing that lives forever stays kind. 3 nights later, he returned. Not to the village, but to me. I woke with soil under my nails. I had sleepwalked to the edge of the marked trees. He was waiting, but not watching. Just present. Taylor found me before sunrise. She said the veil was thinning because of me, that my arrival had stirred old paths. I wasn't just a visitor. I was the thread that unraveled balance. Kale wanted me gone, said I was cursed, said the jungle would not rest while I remained. But Ayani believed there was still a way, a ceremony, a crossing. Oren offered to take me to the stone circle where the sky once fell. If I stood there at dawn, maybe the spirits would return me. Maybe. We left that night. Taylor gave me a talisman carved from bone. Ayani hugged me like a sister. Kale didn't say goodbye. The path was long and silent. The wind carried strange whispers. At one point, I saw figures in the trees, too tall, too still. Oren said nothing. At dawn, we reached the circle. Stones wrapped in moss, standing like forgotten teeth. Oren told me to wait in the center. He would guard the perimeter. The sun began to rise, and the jungle changed. The trees leaned inward. The wind vanished. The ground trembled beneath my feet. I saw Zareth once more, closer now, just outside the ring. He didn't move, but I could feel him pressing inward, testing something ancient. Then I felt heat behind my eyes. Not fire, memory, my life before, the dig site, my friends, the blue sky, and a hum, low and old. Everything turned white. Not light, just absence. When I opened my eyes, I was back, but not quite. Same tent, same tools, but something was different. The trees around the site had changed, taller, leaning in. And every night since, I've heard whispering, the kind that remembers your name. Back home, the dig site looked the same, but quieter. No voices on the radio, no dusty boots outside, just stillness. I found my notebook where I left it, but half the pages had warped, like they'd soaked in humidity too long. My fingers trembled. I called for the others. No one answered. Not Sophia, not Dr. Maddox, not the local guide. I searched each tent carefully. Their things were there, but no signs of life. Water still in bottles, clipboards open mid-note, like they had just stepped away. I wandered toward the edge of the canyon where we first uncovered the stone arch. It was gone. Only a shallow depression in the sand remained. The carvings, the opening vanished like a breath held too long. I didn't tell anyone when I returned to the research center. I just said I'd gotten lost during a solo walk. I quit the project the next morning and flew home. New Mexico disappeared behind the plane window, but it hadn't let me go. Back in Chicago, things should have returned to normal. I re-enrolled for my final semester, rented a small place near campus, started working at the museum again part-time, but I kept waking up at 4:11 a.m. every night. Always the same dream. The jungle breathing around me, trees leaning, voices behind them whispering names I almost recognized. Sometimes, I'd hear Oren's voice clear as day, calling me back. Sometimes, I'd see Zareth standing across the river, waiting. My roommate, Danny, noticed the change. She thought I'd caught some tropical parasite. I laughed it off. I didn't want her to know I couldn't stand mirrors anymore, that I'd started seeing movement behind my reflection. Weeks passed. I tried staying busy. I walked different routes, listened to podcasts, kept lights on while I slept. Then, one evening, while locking up the lower archive room in the museum, I found a visitor had signed in, using my name. There was no one else on the floor. I checked each wing, storage, even the curator's lounge, all empty. When I returned to the log, my name had been crossed out, and underneath, someone had written Z in the same red ink I'd seen before. I asked security for the footage. They said the camera outside the archive had glitched that night, just static. From 7 to 8 p.m., I laughed, nodded, thanked them, but my chest felt tight the entire walk home. That night, Taylor came to me, not in a dream, not fully awake either. Her voice was softer now, carried by wind that wasn't moving. She said the gate wasn't closed, that what I saw in the past was never just the past. She said my crossing had left a mark, that things slip through when they find a name to follow. I started writing again, journaling, sketching, trying to trace back every detail. Ayani's stories, Kale's warnings, the way Oren always paused near tree roots. I felt a pressure growing behind the walls of my apartment, like sound too low to hear. Then came Elio, a guest speaker at the university. He lectured on pre-columbian symbolism, but when I approached him after class, he didn't ask my name. He said, simply, "You've seen the circle." We met at a diner later that week. I told him everything. He didn't interrupt, just listened, then opened his bag and showed me a small talisman bone carved in the same pattern Taylor gave me. Elio said the circle was one of many, not all still active, but when one wakes, it stirs others. And sometimes, those who return bring more than memory. He offered to help, not fix, but balance. He believed there was a way to cut the thread connecting me to Zareth's presence, but it required returning just once more. The thought made my hands shake, but I said yes, not because I was brave, because I was tired. We drove west, through Kansas, into New Mexico. The old road to the site was closed now. Too many landslides, they said. We parked near the foothills and hiked the rest. As we walked, the air changed again. That same cold, dry shift, birds stopped calling. And in the distance, I saw them. Not clearly, but trees seemed to move where the wind didn't press. Elio handed me a candle, unlit, told me to stand where the sand dips into the old circle. He would walk the perimeter and read from a passage written in Nahuatl. I stepped into the hollow. The wind dropped, light dimmed, and again, the jungle returned, but not fully, just pieces. My tent, the river, a flicker of firelight, and Zareth, closer than ever. He didn't move, but his presence cracked the stillness like glass. I gripped the talisman, felt it heat against my skin. Elio's voice rang through the trees. Zareth's form trembled, like a shadow losing shape. The circle beneath me pulsed. And for a moment, I wasn't sure if I was falling forward or backward. Then everything stopped. Elio knelt across from me, pale, sweating, exhausted. I was still holding the candle, still unlit. The trees around us were quiet, too quiet, and I swear I saw something etched into the bark beside me. My name. Since returning from the circle, I haven't felt entirely alone. My apartment still looked the same photos on the wall, same kettle in the kitchen, but certain corners felt colder, like the air held its breath around me. Elio stayed in touch. We met every few days to compare notes. He had diagrams, old texts, even a few relics tied to the tree rings he mentioned before. I tried to keep up, but my focus would slip every time I caught my name scratched into a windowsill or a lamppost. I stopped telling people. Danny had already moved out, said the vibe in the place gave her headaches. I didn't argue. The silence was better, until it wasn't. I started hearing the sound of wind chimes, but I don't own any. They rang once at 2 a.m. and then again at 2:07. I checked the hallway. Nothing. No draft. No explanation. The next day, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Just a folded piece of paper inside, and on it, the same pattern as Taylor's talisman. Beneath it, one sentence. The veil grows thin when you forget who you were. I called Elio. He didn't answer. Later that night, he sent a short message. He was leaving town. He didn't say where, just that he needed to find another site. One that might explain why the gate never truly closed. I felt abandoned. Again. But a part of me understood. He had seen more than he let on, and maybe he knew something worse was coming. At work, I tried focusing on the present, cataloging artifacts, helping with exhibition setup, answering questions from tourists who had no idea that half the masks they admired had once belonged to real rituals. One afternoon, a new intern joined the museum team. Her name was Juna. Bright eyes, calm voice, sharp attention to detail. She asked good questions, took notes on everything. But something about her unsettled me. She always stood just slightly too still, as if waiting for something I couldn't see. Her questions shifted from museum topics to personal ones. What time do you get here? Where do you live now? I lied, just a little. I said I still lived near campus, that I was never alone in the evenings. She nodded but didn't respond. Later that week, while shelving ancient pottery fragments in the lower archive, I found a strand of dark hair caught on a broken clay lip. It matched Juna's color, but she had never been in that room. I checked the log. Her name wasn't there. That night, I dreamed of the jungle again. But this time, it was quiet. Too quiet. No animals, no footsteps. Just me, standing at the edge of the circle. And across from me, not Zareth, Juna. She didn't speak, just watched. Her eyes glowed faintly, like coals under ash. I woke with a mark on my wrist, a red line that faded by breakfast. I returned to the museum, but kept my distance. I started researching protection rituals, older than the ones Elio had shared. I found stories about watchers, not spirits, not people. Beings that moved between timelines, slipping through cracks left by disruption. Juna smiled more now, said she felt like we had a strange connection. I nodded politely. Inside, I counted the number of exits in every room. Then one morning, she was gone. No goodbye, no explanation. The director said she withdrew her internship and left the city, just like that. That should have been the end, but it wasn't. A week later, a package arrived at the museum. No label. Inside, a stone tablet fragment covered in vines. No one recognized the script, but I did. The same markings carved into the tree trunks in the ancient grove. The same ones that spelled my name. I asked to take it home under the pretense of studying it. That night, I placed it under a cloth and slid it into the closet. But the dreams returned anyway. Only this time, they weren't dreams. I would wake standing in the middle of my living room, lights off, phone dead. And once, the front door was ajar. Not wide, just enough to suggest it had been closed but never latched. Taylor's voice echoed faintly during one of those nights. She said it was not Zareth that crossed this time. It was the memory of what he touched, and that memory had found a vessel. I tried to draw what I remembered. The figure in the dream. the one that wasn't Juna but wore her shape. It didn't breathe, it didn't blink, but it smiled. I showed the drawing to a professor I trusted. He called it a watcher's echo, said they appear in cultures across continents, always when time is disrupted, always when someone returns who shouldn't. I asked what they want. He said they never ask. They wait. And they remember. I used to feel grounded by the things I could explain. Ancient bones, carbon dating, fractured pottery that told of forgotten meals. Those were puzzles with edges. But lately, nothing fits. Time feels soft around me, like it's folding, not flowing. I still work at the museum, but they've moved me to admin. They say I need less stress. Maybe I agree. Maybe I just needed a door that locked. Every time I close my eyes, I see that tablet fragment, the way it hummed without sound. Last week, I left it with a colleague, Jonah, bright, curious, always drawn to the oddities. I didn't tell him what I'd seen, just asked if he'd help catalog it, quietly. The next morning, he called in sick. By evening, no one had heard from him. I visited his apartment, lights on, door locked, but no answer. Inside, through the window, I saw his couch cushions scattered, pages pinned to the wall in strange spirals. The police found no sign of him, just shoes by the door, coffee still warm. They're treating it like a mental break. I'm not so sure. I saw one of his pinned sketches. It wasn't of the tablet. It was of me. The drawing was precise. My jacket, my earrings, the shape of my posture. Standing in front of trees I didn't recognize. They curved behind me like a cage. Later that night, a knock came at my door. 3 soft taps. I didn't open it. I looked through the peephole. No one was there. But taped to the door was a torn page. One word written in thick charcoal: return. I didn't sleep. I lit every lamp, kept the talisman in my palm. It was warm, then cold, then warm again, like it knew something I didn't. The next morning, I went to see an old contact, Dr. Nell. She specialized in myth memory mapping, said that sometimes locations hold echoes of past trauma so strong they imprint on new minds. When I told her what happened, she looked uneasy. She offered tea. I said no. She pulled out an old map, one made before state lines were drawn. She pointed to a symbol near the Rio Grande, a circle inside tree roots. She called it a threshold site, said very few remain, and fewer survive touching them. I asked her what happens to those who do. She looked at me, serious, and said it depends on what followed them out. I thanked her and left, but I wasn't alone. On the train ride home, I saw a reflection in the window, not mine. A girl, maybe 13. Pale skin, dark eyes. She sat behind me, but didn't blink. When I turned to check, the seat was empty. That night, I dreamt again, but this time I wasn't in the jungle. I was in my own apartment, but it wasn't mine anymore. The walls bled leaves, the carpet turned to moss, and the windows showed stars I didn't know. Zareth stood at the end of the hallway, still, silent, but something had changed. His body flickered, like a signal failing, his shape twisted, not just human or spirit, something in between. I called Elio. His phone was disconnected. I emailed him. No reply. I don't know if he's alive or if he ever left the threshold. A week passed. I spoke less. I moved slower. One morning I saw a symbol burned into my front porch. A perfect spiral, identical to the one Jonah had drawn. The wood around it smelled like cedar and salt. I visited the site again. Not the dig, the original place, the slope where I first vanished. It was empty, but the air pressed against me like a hand. I could feel it. I stood there until sunset, waiting, not sure for what. Then I saw her. Not Juna, not Ayani, someone else. A woman in gray, standing at the edge of the ridge. She didn't move, but I knew her name without asking. She was called Saya, and she wasn't alive in the way we understand it. She spoke, not through sound, but memory. I felt her words in my ribs. She said balance required a tether. that Zareth's shape needed form to persist, and he had chosen mine, but it wasn't permanent. If I returned willingly, if I faced what he feared most, the thread might sever. I asked what he feared. She said, forgetting. Forgetting what he was before power, before hunger. I don't know what that means yet, but I agreed, not out loud, in my bones. That night, the wind chimes rang again. This time, I followed the sound. It led me to my closet. I opened it, and inside, beneath my old winter coat, was the same stone tablet, the one Jonah had taken, the one I had buried in someone else's hands. It had come back, and this time, it was warm.